That's a consideration too.
Well, we brought that up before. No, well, I told Jerry, because it's always a struggle for Jerry and I told him, I mean, every time we've gotten support, we've like done a little doodle poll and.
Well, his struggle, having those kids,
Yeah.
growing up at school, and
Jerry's got some.
You got 7 AM meeting.
So, but I obviously will wait till we get a new person. But I think it's worth doing that again.
I've never been one to be
Good
able to
morning.
sleep while I
Be like complete paradigm shift. If I don't go to evenings for you.
I started having to read the same things 5 times, but it didn't.
reading around the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it, when I went back and looked at, but I couldn't find it.
You want me to print out?
Maybe it's just the executive director's report or something, like somewhere else it's there. I think we could-
Either one. I know, it's fine. Grab
I
one.
got a question for the closing before I leave today. Before you go.
It's nice and cozy. Yeah.
Should we get my hot air in here?
It's really far away. Everybody avoids these seats as the sun comes out.
Oh,
The office down there.
Actually,
The office.
no, I'm like a cat.
No,
I'll
you're
take that, but I take that sun
I
anytime.
don't know how that-
You get to about
She called me.
Yes, yes.
Hi, good.
I'm Chris.
Good morning, how are you? No, sir, I'm here for, I'm just here for 15 minutes.
Here for the fun.
Yeah, I heard it was the best place to be today, so that's why I'm here.
That's the best, but it's probably not the worst.
Eric's texting me this morning.
Oh, yeah? Transitions for him. I was thinking about it this morning. Yeah.
No, it's just my.
Oh, really?
I think they, because she's also got some stuff in the house.
Sure, sure,
It's gonna
don't look.
work out.
Okay, just shut it.
It's called the keto diet.
It sounds like a pretty decent. man.
Ours now.
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
just want to be a part of it.
That's what she's
talking
No,
they set the tone for I know so many
She's worse.
people. My dad, I just wish I could just be as they are. I love all the other people around me. I know
Is that the thing to do?
The new law this year, that all IDA
Oh,
meetings
it's a
have
great.
to be live streamed and recorded and posted.
I think I
On your website?
I could be deterred with a few spec games in a row. I already have a stressful day, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long do they stay up there, at a specific time or?
Forever.
So don't.
Because somebody's got a lot of space somewhere.
Right.
No.
Or,
It's really helping with tech
Clear
companies
and
now.
concise. Do you want to get started, Jim?
Sounds like it.
I don't know, Tom was supposed to come in,
Yeah.
Goggin will be here.
Yeah, we should go.
Sure, that's fine.
Well, right now, we're only officially at board 6, so. we have 4, so. All right, 8:08, get started. So first up is our guest, Christy.
So I would like to introduce Christy Anderson-Nakano. She owns the Human Factor, which is an organizational leadership consulting firm. She's from Canada, and she's a transplant to Lowville. A little bit of background, we worked with Christy in the spring, late winter, early spring, on our organizational strategy session, just how are we organizing our internal work and all the projects we have going on, and that proved to be very helpful to us. We decided to go along with Christy for our strategic planning because she is not an economic development consultant, so she's coming in with this unbiased view of economic development, and I really like her process and the way she does things. So she's gonna give us a brief 15-minute overview of the process that we are gonna go through. We sent around a chart Yep, so everybody should have that. And that's it. Yeah.
Morning.
Morning.
A few people around the table I've had the pleasure of meeting and working with in the past. And so some of these pieces, as I go through them, I wanted to do a couple of things in this 15 minutes and leave a bit of time for some conversation or questions that you might have, because it is different than what people typically do. So I'll tell you a little bit about the process and then about a key role that we're asking you to consider playing in the first phase of this process as well, and then we can open it up to other questions. Is that fair? So the Lewis County Economic Development Soaring Together process is really about doing a couple of things. One is gathering information from a wider variety of resources to talk about what is economic development and what could it mean for this community. So this group for sure involved, staff members involved, and then having some other folks involved in the process as well for two reasons. One is to get other input, but secondly, and as importantly, to get their buy-in to whatever comes out of the other end of this. If any of you have ever done something you thought was a really great idea and you developed it behind closed doors, and then you got to push the rope up the hill to try to convince other people that your idea was a good one, this avoids that. And so the process that we're talking about is really to engage people in the process at the beginning so that we ask for their opinions about questions we care the answer to around what does economic development mean currently, where are we doing it well, what else could we be doing to make this a really viable community from that perspective. And so I think later this morning in your meeting, there will be some further conversation and some work staff have started to do to talk a little bit about that and tease it out a bit. But in our two-phase process, it runs like this. One is the expectation setting, which is our conversation today, and I've had one like that with the staff a week or so ago. And then we'll follow up after your meeting today with any other things that come out of your conversations now to fine-tune that. And then what we do is if you look down to the SOAR section of your report, this table, there's two phases. The first one is discovering the current strengths and the aspirations of the community. So we're proposing to do that through phase one, which is a discovery session with key stakeholders. And we're proposing that we have two of those sessions. One, we'd use the February 11th Business Leaders Breakfast to have people who are more of an open session, plus some invitees that comes in. And so we've been working with the staff to determine who might be some of those particular, we think it would be great if you'd add your 2 cents worth in. So, but we hold it at a time that was something that's already going to happen. And that in that session, then we get the broadest sampling of people's input. And then following that up, then to have a session with this group. So staff and board members, perhaps a couple of other selected participants, but primarily this group, for you to really then dig in and give your 2 cents worth in based on your experience, your perspective in the roles that you play associated with this group currently. So we wanted to have an in-depth piece for that, but also a broader section. The questions will be the same for both groups. In my experience, and Jerry and I just finished that process not that long ago with the hospital, we want to get a sampling from a variety of people. And then phase two is this group coming back together to look at all of that information and have some process pieces to help you sort that down to then what's the most critical things of what people said, what are the patterns and trends, and what are the ones that make the most sense to you. So from a credibility perspective, you've all opened it up, you've listened, and then you'll take out of that and design forward what are the key themes and threads of what economic development priorities need to make the most sense, which allows then your staff to focus in on those things, and for you as a board at a governance level to be able to ask the right questions around, are we meeting those priorities? Because there's a lot of things, as I've come to learn in these times that I've worked with the staff group, there are a lot of competing ideas for how to best use the time and the resources here. And so to help the group and you all get to a place of saying, okay, here are the priority choices, which means what are we saying yes to and what are we saying no to that's been made from a more of a consensus point of view. So you bring people in, phase two, we design the result, SOAR, is an acronym. People familiar with the word SWOT? Okay, so this is like a SWOT, only it's not SWOT. In SWOT, you're looking at the threats and you're looking at the weaknesses in addition to the strengths and the opportunities. In a SOAR, you're looking at the strengths, the opportunities, the aspirations, so what are people looking towards? And then you design the results accordingly. The conversations that happen in that process, as opposed to a SWOT, tend to cause human beings to want to engage as opposed to blame and defend. So the moment we move into weakness and threats, people feel something that's not necessarily conducive to them buying in. It's, here's the problem, you guys fix it. If we go to, well, if you're really asking me what we should look like, that's what happens in the aspirations and the opportunities conversations. They're more likely to become your partners on the other side of this, partly because you asked them. Secondly, because the way in which you talked about it is constructive. And thirdly, because the language that will come back out of this will be things people recognize because they participated in. And that's why you don't have to push a rope uphill on the other side. Okay? George Jetson's here. So that's the process piece. And let me tell you a little bit about the role, and then I'm going to open it up for questions about any of it. Is that fair? Okay. So the process piece and the role for you in that is in phase one, in that business leaders breakfast. At each of the tables, we need to have people who are going to be the host. And we're proposing that if each of you were at one of those tables acting as the host, that you can then be gathering the information. So the role we want you to play is you're the steward of the process at the table that you're at. You're ensuring that the conversation happens. And you're only there as a listener. And so your contributions as a contributor to this process happens in the other phase one process, which is your closed group. But in this one, we would be asking, good morning. We would be asking for you to be a host and a listener at a table. That gives people a chance to know who you are in the role that you're playing associated with this work. And it helps us out by us having somebody at every table to be able to ensure that the conversation happens. My job as the main facilitator of the process is if you get people who are taking the conversation off track or they're not staying on topic of where you are, you just give me a signal and I'll come and deal with those things. So I'm not expecting you to be the problem solver at the table or the negotiator, but if you can act as host, and then I can go to the places as needed during the process. So the leadership role that you would play can help us tremendously, which means you have to be comfortable with where we're going, why we're going there, before you can act in that role. So that's why I'm here today, is to give you some of that basic information. I'll meet with everybody just a few minutes before we start on that morning of the February 11th session for anybody who can be there, just to kind of confirm what the key work, but this is the conceptual piece that I need to be able to buy into before we move forward. Brittany, am I covering all the key things that we need?
I think so. Can everyone make the February 11th?
What's the time? What is the time?
It'll be 8 to 10. We'll probably have a little bit of time beginning for
8:20.
networking. Yeah, we'll officially start at
You said
8:20.
8:20 is when we need you there. Yeah, 8:20 is when we'd actually
8
start
o'clock
in.
Yeah.
food.
Breakfast. Breakfast is at
It's
8.
not that important. is it?
Where was it? What's the
At
location?
the level Elks.
Did you just say where it was?
At the Elks.
At the Elks Club.
Off the Oaks.
Yes.
Everything is.
And so we would make sure that everybody's got a name tag that distinguishes you as such in here. So we go from there. So let me open this up to questions around the process. It's the free for all. This is your time. Thoughts, comments? Make sense? Not make sense?
What's the role of the Board of Legislators? I mean, getting buy-in from this board is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
getting buy-in at the next level of policy decision is another. I mean, we have 2 legislators that participate regularly. Is there, should we make a push to make sure the legislators are there on the 11th? Or is there another session? When do you want to invite them to the table?
Right. Brittany, do you want to speak to that one?
Yeah, so for the breakfast, we're gonna individually call each legislator to invite them to that session. We still we have a list of stakeholders that we're still working on and coming up with. And that's something that we need to determine for phase 2, who to include in those sessions. One of the buy-ins that we need from all of you, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, is we're now changing the conversation to economic development. And especially with this board, it's not just strictly IDA projects. We are now going to be contracted with the county to provide economic development services. So with that said, there's a lot of facets of economic development in this community, and we need to be working together and we need to be talking to one another. So we need to decide for phase 2 who we want involved in those conversations. So for the breakfast, I envision, if we want healthcare at the breakfast, Jerry would be facilitating, but let's invite a couple of doctors or nurses, people who are working in healthcare but living in this community. That's what I thought, but definitely a phone call to each legislator to invite them to the breakfast.
Just as a heads up, I'll be in town.
What, Larry?
Change your plan.
You buy the plane tickets? I'll be there.
Where are you going?
Ron will take them for you.
Florida, I'm in.
And I mean, to that point, in phase 2, it has, and the working session with board and staff and others as identified, so
Yeah.
that's the list you're
Yeah,
trying to put
right.
together.
right. So we've come up, with the bubbles of economic development. In that phase 2, we want healthcare, we want someone from workforce, we want someone from housing, we want someone from, a small business owner, a manufacturer, just someone represented from those facets that make up economic development.
So,
And through that process, through this discovery process, we might realize that maybe there's too many facets, or maybe we're not including people that we should be.
So as a backup plan, in the past, there've been limited success in getting legislators to a business breakfast.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could do this at in front of the next board meeting where you could, we could get the legislators there, say at 4:00, and we could run through this same scenario.
Yeah, we could.
We seem to have more
Yeah.
success
Could we do,
doing that. But
so I'm just wondering, could we do that after the February 11th so that they don't feel like they're off the hook to come to the
Sure.
Let's make them, it'd be good to have them at the breakfast, then we could follow up with that to get
It'd
them
be
all in
wonderful
one
to
room
give them
together.
breakfast.
But I feel like if we do that before the breakfast, then they would have
No worries.
no motivation to come.
We could, depending on that success, we could schedule it for March.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in addition to making individual calls to each of them, we did plan, trying to get on the agenda for the next legislative board meeting to, really kind of push the point, and that's gonna be pretty close to that February 11th date. It really pushed the point again, we'd really like you to come, so hopefully we can see some attendance.
The other way to engage folks without them attending is the key questions. We're in the process of drafting at the moment. And they can be done with interviews with people beforehand, so that even if I can't be physically present, my voice could be in the room. And so it's also possible, the advantage of having the legislators there is that they'll also get to hear at their table, and then sort of the sampling of what we heard and generated in the room. So they'll have a bit of a sense. So not being there means they don't get that. But having a contribution to make from the representative perspective can be done without them coming, without holding a separate meeting for them as well.
Hey, we invite, you put it out there, you reach out, whoever participates,
Yeah.
But no, this isn't, this is your guys' process. Whoever, we put, I'll grant you, put it out there, whoever takes it, takes it.
Right.
Yeah. There's people that don't want it.
One, I guess, question, thought, I mean, with the legislators, you go to see them, do you brief them of what came out of the 11th meeting? Or do you just hold a mini session with those guys in the room?
You don't, the idea with the discovery phase of this, so the SOAR is strengths, opportunities, and aspirations from a variety of perspectives. None of them are wrong, they're just going to be what they are. So what you don't want to do is shape by saying, well, we're so far, what do you want to add? That's for you to do in phase 2. So it's a really important question that you asked, yeah. So you can see some of these pieces are ones where, depending on the direction we're going, the inclusion on the stakeholder groups will inevitably, we're going to miss people. But what we're also going to have, and the advantage that you already have, is you have a pre-existing forum, i.e. the Business Leaders Breakfast, that is going to bring a sampling of people. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a range of things. When you get to phase 2, one of the things that we've talked with the staff group about is there will be some best practice information that's out there in journals or other articles that will prepare a package for you ahead of the phase 2 so that you can also read about things that are beyond our community. It's certainly important to hear from here, but there may be other things that are happening in rural someplace else in the USA that might be, oh, we haven't thought about that. We haven't asked it that way. So the goal in the discovery phase is to get a sampling and to get buy-in from the local community by the language, by who we invite. And just as you were saying, Ryan, we put the invitation out there, and where we can't have people attend in that, knowing at least that they're knowing that this is what's going on, okay? So the communication pre, during, and post is really important to let people know. And that's one of the things that in the background, so the middle part of the table is my support of this, the staff group, and you, to be able to sort of answer those questions and make sure you've got the conceptual pieces, and then we'll make sure that it's in your language to be able to then put out to media as is appropriate. Any other questions? Anything else? Does that kind of give you the framework? Shall I leave you with that?
Perfect.
Thank you
Nice
very
to
much.
meet you.
Appreciate
It's a
it.
pleasure.
We're looking forward to it.
Me too. I feel honored to have the opportunity. Yes.
Take care. Awesome.
Bye now.
Thank you.
See you in a couple hours.
All right, so it was on the original agenda that we might have someone from Duke Energy here, but they have informed Brittany that they're not going to attend.
They're still reviewing. Cheyenne had sent.
Yeah, so I sent a couple financial models to them, much like we've done with the wind projects. Basically saying, okay, they basically said that they could get to $4,000 per megawatt.
Just if we wanna, since they're not here for, like as a guest, we have that on,
We can do that later, yep.
we have that on, sorry.
No, it's fine.
So if we go back to the, what was sent out last week by Cheyenne, we had minutes from the December meeting that we need to approve if there's no corrections.
I'll make a motion.
Jared, we have a motion from Jared, second. Second, Jared, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Pass. All right, we don't actually have to approve the committee minutes right there, but they were in the packet for everyone's information. November financial reports.
And these were reviewed at the finance committee meeting last month. Nothing really huge and outstanding. There is still that negative hanging out in fixed assets that is related to the Trinity F property and how we've got the property classified versus the depreciation on that property. So I'm still working through that with the auditor. I think that needs to change a little bit. But really, nothing significant. We do have a hearing tomorrow for the $135,000 grant, the public hearing, for what was the Commerce property and now this building. So they've approved it at committee level, I guess. And so we have the public hearing, and then eventually we will finally get a check for that money. And then you'll see that accounts receivable on the balance sheet go down significantly. Other than that, really, no big changes. I will be tasking the finance committee with a bunch of things at our committee meeting later this month. The IDA budget needs to be submitted in Paris pretty quickly, and just a bunch of Q4 calendar year wrap up.
Cheyenne, when's the finance committee meeting next month?
This month is January 21st.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that in addition to dates related to the strategic planning committee, we should probably review dates pretty closely at the end of the meeting, just to make sure everybody can make those dates.
So do we have a motion to approve the financial?
Yes.
Godwin, second. Ron? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Okay, and I apologize again because I'm not, Brittany's, got laid out here and I skipped over the director's report, too, so I apologize for that, but, so Brittany, I just thought we should, get into the formal stuff and we can do the Duke update later, but it's up, I'll leave it up to you. Do you wanna continue on for the items for approval? or-
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
we'll do directors.
So we have a Lionsdale Re-Energy property lease extension.
So we provided you with 4 documents with the board minutes. The only document that we need approval for today is for the letter of agreement for the lease extension with Re-Energy on that property. They have to close out a few items with the DEC, so they're asking for an extension until February 15th. The other 3 documents that were provided were more or less items that will take place for closing and post-closing. And Kevin and Tim and Re-Energy's attorney are working on some revisions of those contracts and letters, so we don't really need to worry about those today. But we only need to approve just the lease extension for Re-Energy until February 15th.
Any
And did we
questions
all-
on that?
I
In
have
fact,
copies of
we
the
don't
letter.
have a pilot or anything going on with it, right, or we don't have to that stuff, so
That's how, yeah, I think
that's just your formalities then?
Yeah.
Purely formalities.
Yeah.
So do we have
I'll move it.
Ron?
I'll second.
Tom? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. The economic development contract with Lewis County, so there was a little, I'd like to thank Jared for really taking a close look at that and providing some notes to Kevin. And I believe we have a draft back with Kevin's notes.
Yep, I have a couple of copies, I don't think I have enough for everybody.
Just look at this and that's.
Jared sent some suggested revisions. Kevin took a look at the contract twice, and so on this copy, there's some recommendations for just basic changes. It's a very simple agreement.
I guess my biggest take on this, the original draft, is there's a lot of talk about projects, which projects from the IDA standpoint really are pilot type tax. Really pertains to IDA only things as opposed to economic development side of things.
So one of the first changes under the second whereas paragraph, the second to last sentence, it says, for its use in promoting, marketing, and furthering economic development projects. Kevin suggested to just remove projects. So just furthering economic development in Lewis County. That was one of the changes he suggested. Under the now therefore paragraph, Kevin suggested to take out the clause in regards to section 224 of the county law. Do you want to explain that a little bit more, Kevin?
County law, section 224 authorizes a specific list of contracts. And contracts with the IDA is not one of them. The most common one in there is contracts with cooperative extension. There's a list of them in there. The IDA is not in there. It could just say county law. That section isn't the right section.
That language probably came from Joan, it's probably standard from.
I think it probably was cut from another contract somewhere. Like it just isn't, it's the wrong section.
Gotcha.
No big deal. It just should be either county's paid.
So just take, so what should the sentence say, or what specific words should we take out?
Say, in accordance with the provisions of the county law, instead of section 24, section 224 of the county law. The reference to section 224 should come.
In paragraph 4, for the services actually provided and/or, Kevin suggested to add in and/or, the project's implemented. So we are providing services and/or doing projects. Are we in agreement with that? And then paragraph 6, Kevin stated he would like to see this clause be made reciprocal so that each side agrees to indemnify the other.
Say again.
He would like to see this clause be made reciprocal so that each side agrees to indemnify the other.
So is there suggested language?
Do you have suggested language for that?
Well, I would say simply that instead of saying the IDA shall indemnify, it would be this, each party shall indemnify the whole harmless of the other party, and this officers
Okay.
from that time. That's not that big a deal because the IDA is the one that's actually doing things under this project. The county's only responsibility is running a check.
Right.
Assuming that they do that correctly, then it's not a whole lot of liability that's gonna come up from that store.
Never know with the new treasurer.
But so I wasn't, but when I'm looking at a contract for my client, I always want to see the indemnification clause to flow in favor of my client as opposed to the county.
Perfect.
So the wordsmithing for the first line makes sense. Then there's reference specifically to the IDA on the last line, number 4. Would that be different, Kevin?
It would, instead of saying the IDA, it would say of said party, its employees or agents, and the performance of the meetings.
The only thing Joan and I talked about was the term, we appropriate the money in the budget, then we have to do this contract. So it's kind of 2 separate opportunities for that amount to be altered or changed.
Okay.
If there were a way to set this up where, and maybe there isn't a way, Joan, I can think of one, but if you guys have an idea, to maybe do a 3-year contract with some language like, whatever amount is appropriated in the budget, by the legislators in the budget, is what we'd like to do, at least me, is, accelerate this number from 183,000, at least up to 200, maybe more, if we can. Then we're asking, legislators to approve the budget and then approve a contract and then, sometimes approve the appropriation. That's 3 whacks at, this number. I just,
We'd still have to amend the contract every year and have another something on paper that says here's what it is, right? So you have to do something in there, yeah. Would you be, also one board of legislators cannot bind a future board. So you really couldn't go, you could do when you guys have an election, but you could go a 2-year contract, but you can't bind the budgets in the future beyond that. So, but you could do a 2-year contract, but amounts in there.
I mean, multi-year, I would want, there's no clause in here that we can back out of this contract, only you can, from the looks of it. I would wanna have some language in there that says if you're not gonna give us enough money to sustain things, we can't provide the services you want.
Right. I don't know if that's realistic, maybe every year, we just do this every year.
I think a 2-year contract rate solves a lot of problems as far as we run continuing and then. But it has to be contingent on next year's appropriation.
I don't know what,
I don't know how everybody else is set up.
I don't know how you could do a 2-year contract because there's gonna be pushback, on the second year because it hasn't been discussed on that side of the aisle. And if you say anything to that effect, that there will be some.
I mean, I think it's a good faith idea, sorry.
No, man.
I think it's a good faith idea, but to kick, at the same time, to kick this off, like we've talked about, it's now puts even more on us to perform, because with this being a line item instead of part of the economic development department. And I think if we, at least for this first year, we get out of the gate strong and work towards this, and then maybe we can build some momentum and some support going forward. So I think it's a great, good faith idea, Brian, but I just, maybe it's too soon to Larry's point, maybe we can build on this and, use this first year to really show what can be done and.
Okay.
And,
They've agreed to this, so, this will be acceptable. And it makes it easier in future years because it becomes a baseline. And at that point, maybe we can increase it to 200,000. But to try to do that in one contract.
Right.
Is this the election year for legislators?
This is the first year of a 2-year term.
This year?
2020 and 2021 is the full term.
Okay.
So I guess I was just thinking we could do, if it
well, it makes sense.
I was
If we
thinking
can
get it in, then that, with some language that would say something like, contingent upon 2021 appropriation, or, basically not having to put this up on a tee to be whacked every single year.
Well, you can do an MOU that's gonna span years over here if you wanted to, and then you just have a
Right.
contract operating. Yeah, that's a good point, because we could have, maybe that's, when we do the strategic planning process here, and the county's involvement in that, maybe an outcome of that is a longer term MOU.
Well, and I think
That's
if we
contingent
can,
on.
if we can get the SEDS plan put together, that's also gonna build on having a framework for this to follow under.
And, the conversation that Christie is setting up will, I hope generate some cooperation and understanding between the two boards, because there is a huge communication gap between the two as to what this entity and like the LCDC really do.
Well, I think
And they need to be somehow educated on that, and, that's what she's suggesting is a good stepping stone to try to get.
And I told Jared, with this contract, hopefully this year we do some really great relationship building and we put out some really great stuff, and it's not, hopefully they say, let's increase it.
Well, speaking
That would
of,
be our goal.
relationships, this is the first time probably relationship has been defined on paper
Yes.
in a way that both sides can go back to a baseline understanding.
We've been
So,
trying
that's
to
good.
get to line item funding for the
This
IDA
is a
for
good
several
step.
years, and this will be the first year.
Well, and I think after we're done with this process and this year, we'll have economic development defined on what it means here. We're still pretty loosey-goosey on what that really entails.
Well, the last couple of years, we've made a lot of progress. You've got, you've you got a foundation of a good track record, and I think it will just continue to grow.
Right. So can we still approve base?
Well,
contingent upon-
so the county hasn't seen these, Joan hasn't seen these changes, so if we, I don't know, Kevin, but I mean, we could, if they accept our changes, we could.
And then theirs was an offer, and we're doing basically a counter offer, and then they can approve it at their next meeting, right? So we can approve it with the change.
Or approve for the interim director to sign it contingent on them accepting the
Right.
changes.
And if there are some additional edits from the county that are, small and not substantive, that we still empower the executive director to sign, so we don't have to bring it back.
Right.
I don't see any problem on our side of that.
So we have,
Well, actually, Joe's gonna sign it anyways.
Yeah, actually, it is Joe.
Yeah, for those. So bring it forward as a motion.
Jerry has a motion to,
Second.
Jerry second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That was Jerry and Jared?
Yep, correct.
Thank you.
All right, motion passed. So next on the list is MOU with the Chamber of Commerce for admin time.
So back in October, you all agreed to have us move forward with finding a temporary admin to help us with this transition. We kind of went back and forth, should we go with a temp agency? Nothing really stuck out to us. But we talked with the chamber, since they are not contracted with the county to do ATV permits anymore, their admin has more time. And right now, she's currently a 35-hour employee and would like some more hours. So we would like your approval to set up an MOU with the chamber to utilize Melanie, their admin, to assist us with just administrative duties, compliance stuff, background filing. I mean, the list goes on of the types of administrative work.
Is
We need
that more
to
of a contract than an MOU?
Yeah, we would have to
I mean,
kind of decide what the agreement needs to look like, for sure. And kind of in my head, it was just, basically paying
Quite honestly,
whatever
if they just
her rate
bill
is.
us, then we could pay it.
Exactly.
Right,
So the chamber would bill us for the hours.
So really just need whatever the rates are gonna be and.
So
15,
So
15 an hour.
what are we looking at as hours per week? I mean,
Anywhere from 5 to 8.
okay,
we would probably, in initial talks with Kristen, we thought maybe one day we could have her,
okay.
basically, so that we don't have to worry about, she spent 2 hours this day doing our stuff versus, and just for your comfort level, since we haven't done an interview process or anything, I was on the interview committee for the chamber. And so far I've been very impressed with, she's very detail oriented, very, very, very thorough, I think.
Is this even a topic that we as a board need to have? It seems to me that it's not a policy issue, making it work within the budget, and that we empower the executive director and our chair to negotiate this. It almost seems like a level of micromanagement that is not appropriate for
Disagree
the
with that.
IDA
I just
board.
don't know if we've got a budget item that these guys know that they can pull money out of for that. So,
But in the totality of the budget, I would argue that simply two of you just sitting and Joe, make it work within the budget, sounds like a reasonable plan. And it shows up one day and then the directors report to us. I think,
That's fair.
right, is that,
I agree.
I embrace the approach, obviously, because I just think that's part of driving a more progressive organization and putting our collective, limited brain power to those bigger topics.
Yep.
You can go board of legislators.
So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank you for that, and I think it is fair, and it's, so, and maybe another step is just, at the finance committee level, in terms of if there are questions from a budgeting standpoint, but but that's a fair point, and it sounds like there's no major
I wouldn't,
concerns.
I wouldn't limit yourself to 8 hours a week. If you need more, take it. It'll be a plus or minus.
Well, yeah. I guess that depends on her and what she can handle.
And I think, Joe, to your point, I think because it is not clearly defined in the budget, simply a report at finance, how it's, Brittany is making or Cheyenne making it work would be adequate, right?
Sounds good.
All right, so, do we wanna, so that's our list of, issues for approval. We have a few agenda items and updates. Do we wanna start off that now with your, do you have anything else you'd like to add in, Brittany?
Yes. First, I would like to again say thank you for the opportunity to be interim director. We have some 2-month goals that we're trying to achieve within that time frame, and I definitely look forward to continuing to work with you all. And hopefully you took a look at the first interim director report. And a couple of things that I want to highlight. One of our 2-month goals is to really make sure that we are compliant as far as IDA goes with the state and the ADL and some of their updated policies. So we are working with an attorney at Barclay Damon. She's looking at our bylaws and our UTAP, but also just our project files, making sure that we have all of the files that we need in a very organized manner so that if we were to ever get audited, we know where everything is consistent. And we're just really trying to get that up to speed. Our goal for the end of January is to have all of our projects completely reorganized. And then our goal for the end of February is to make sure that we have all of the needed documents onto our website. So, same with live recordings of the meetings. There's just a lot of changes and a lot of things that IDAs need to do, a lot more work, a lot more compliance, and we're just trying to get all that up to speed in January and February.
I think the governance committee, the last 2-3 months of 2019, spent a lot of time on the policy side. And I think did an initial cursory review of the bylaws. There were a few questions, and then as a committee, we felt going to legal for clarification on that. So I think we're at a pretty good place. And also talked about a process for ongoing disciplined review of policies moving forward. So that we don't have to play this catch-up game in the future. So I think this is a good path forward.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to highlight, the New York State CFA grant awards were announced last month, and there are 2 projects, kind of 2, I guess more business-related projects that were awarded. And these applications we assisted with, Hand in Hand Early Childhood Center, they have a potential for an expansion. They were awarded a grant from the state, and Osceola Ski and Sport were awarded for ski cabins. And those were applications that we assisted with. So hopefully we will continue to assist as they move forward.
Can I offer a comment on the hand in hand? Just want to acknowledge how important that is. I think, the health system is the largest employer, and I know we're not unique to this issue of childcare during non-traditional hours. So I think one of the things we can do to help is Hand in Hand is pushing a survey of employees within organizations and really encourage, and maybe it's through the Business Leaders Forum or the Chamber, getting employees to fill out that survey. So they're looking at after hours, especially for organizations that have a 24-hour operation and weekends. So, and I know at our staff meetings, that's one of those things that has come up pretty regularly. The challenge is there a critical mass to make it affordable, right? But the first step is creating the data to appreciate the degree of interest within workers throughout, mostly this part of Lewis County, I would imagine, because that's where they're based.
And I do sit on the hand-in-hand board, I will disclose that, so obviously completely aware of, anything with the building and ownership is a conflict, so, but for the past year, I have sat on their board and discussed many of these issues.
I guess just, I hadn't really thought of this as a conflict, but I am on the United Way committee that made the approvals for the funds that were allocated to agencies.
I sat on that for 5 years.
So I guess it could be a potential conflict being on this board and that board, so I just share that by way of disclosure, and we did approve a disbursement for hand in hand.
Any other questions?
Anything else? Okay, so because it was on the list and I have something in front of me here for correspondence, I just did, Eric has, sent a card and I just wanted to read it. And so it's addressed to the board here, and it says, I hope to express my gratitude for your support and encouragement throughout my campaign and elected process. You never made me feel uncomfortable through this transition, and that is greatly appreciated. I look forward to continuing to serve Lewis County, and I also look forward to more great results from Naturally Lewis. So that was from Eric, and that's all I had. So now we're to the agenda, a couple agenda items and updates, and we'll kick it off back to Cheyenne with the Duke Energy.
Yes. So they let us know earlier in the week that they would not be attending the meeting today. We had, as a board, you had kind of set a firm $4,500 per megawatt threshold for them. And Eric and I's last discussion was with them. We got the feeling they had been at $3,750, and we kind of got the feeling that they could go up to 4,000 per megawatt. And again, they're still waiting to see if they get the NYSERDA funding. And I haven't seen anything awarded or announced on that. They haven't indicated that they've heard anything on that yet. But I sent them a couple financial models, much like we have with wind projects in the past, just showing them ways that they could get to 4,500 per megawatt, at least on a comparable net present value level. And they are still evaluating them, they said. So I think they plan on probably being at a February meeting. Yes.
Is this the project that's spanning the Krogan Champion?
No, this would be the southern on 12D and the southern end of the.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, this is a 20 megawatt project in the town of Leiden. So they're still evaluating that, and really, I think your stance has been, why hurry, because they don't even know about their funding. Yeah.
When did the NYSERDA announcements come out?
They're kind of, there's no set date. So they were actually surprised that they hadn't heard anything yet the last time we talked to them, and that was 2 weeks ago. So hopefully they'll have an answer soon at least.
On this subject, we've spent tons of time discussing the community fund, and to me, this could fit into
That's
that.
that's part of the proposal that we have in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd like to see us move forward on getting that written up, the community fund.
Well, yeah.
We don't necessarily have any funds to put in.
Right, yeah. I mean, right now, this would be the second project that would fall under that. The first was the number 3 wind project, which is, until they go forward with construction is still.
But Tom, you're right, we don't have a framework to put that money into if it is allotted,
But no, yeah, that's a good point to keep working towards, but at this point, it's, this would be the second potential one that fits the mold, that fits that mold.
I guess I'd like to see us have that ready to go whenever these are ready to go.
Oh, Sam, you're in charge of that now.
Thanks for stepping up to the plate.
Alice Nail gets thumbs down first.
On this project, and this is, I think, more of my ongoing education around public meetings versus non-public meetings. So Cheyenne's report, is that the kind of thing that should be done in the open session of the public meeting? Because in some ways, I feel like we're talking about a negotiating strategy.
I was just getting ready to ask Kevin the same exact question. We just talked a lot of numbers just now,
Right, so, not as a, I think it's still trying to sort through that process, while still being transparent and open.
Something to be aware of. It is contract negotiations. It's a perfect topic for executive session.
so we'll have to be mindful of that.
Can I make a note on solar? Because last time we were here, we kind of ruminated about what will happen in Jefferson County with their policy on not giving pilots for green energy projects, and will they get 6, 7, 8,000 per megawatt for their projects because they're unwilling to give a pilot. And if that happens, we'll have to rethink our whole strategy over here. Well, worry not, Jefferson County has changed their taxation policy for green energy for projects under 100 megawatts. So basically, they're saying wind projects will be treated separately than solar projects. They are negotiating right now with 2 different solar developers, and they are absolutely within the 3,000 to 5,000 per megawatt range that we are in. One thing that I think we can learn from Jefferson County, I had a good conversation with their IDA folks a couple weeks ago. They, as part of their UTEP, their taxation or pilot policy, they make the company and the town agree to a single assessor that is a gentleman out of Rochester that just assesses green energy projects or, what pilot projects. Basically, we're taking the assessment out of the hands of the town, which the town assessor probably doesn't want anyway. If you take, look at the wind project, for example, the only time the assessment matters when you have a pilot is for your fire districts, water district, your special districts. That's where the assessment matters. If in the UTEP we say we both agree to the number that this assessor out of Rochester assigns, then you take away that loophole that they tried to exploit with the Maple Ridge project. You don't take it away completely, but you give us a more layer of bulletproof protection by saying we're both agreeing before we even put a shovel in the ground that this assessment from this independent gentleman is going to be something that we agree to, that is accurate for the project. So now it's not the town of Lowville's elected assessor who, I don't want to use, just for example, any town's elected assessor up against a multi-billion-dollar international corporation. It is agreed upon ahead of time. We're both going to use a professional firm that is going to give a fair assessment for the special districts. So I don't know if that's something we're interested in, but it made a whole lot of sense to me as something that they've done to try to give an extra layer of protection to their pilots, before a shovel even goes in the ground. So Kevin, maybe you guys might want to research that. I don't know, but it's an interesting concept.
It creates a sense of independence.
Yeah, and it also takes our folks off the hook who, an elected assessor in Lewis County is not going to have the expertise to assess what a wind turbine is worth. I mean, how, what I mean? But a firm that does this professionally might, provide a.
Seem to take some of the politics out of it too.
Developer waives their right to challenge that assessment.
I don't think I don't think you can ever waive your right to challenge, because that's pretty fundamental to owning property.
That's what I thought, okay.
But they're agreeing, they have a signed signature that says, we agree this is a fair. I don't know exactly what the language is, but they have to agree to have their asset assessed by this independent person. And they agree that, I don't know, Jefferson County, you have to see the language that they use, but the point is, you're getting an independent person in from day one. And it tries to limit that loophole that they try to exploit with Maple Ridge.
How do we tell how independent this person is? How do you judge that?
I don't know.
Just like any other individual being influenced by a billion-dollar corporation, right? I'm just bringing that,
Yeah.
I have no idea. So I guess a way to look at it would be the previous record of assessments that have come out of that, how fair those look like to us. That's how anybody would judge that.
Be like hiring any other professional service.
Well, we're hiring them,
Yeah.
not the company, so they work for us.
Oh, okay. But yeah, but how do we tell the company you can't take them out to a trip to Jamaica just to make it a little bit, hey, just saying. It's
Yeah.
lobbying at the core level, but I guess the track record would be the way to.
Well, there really isn't a huge track record in Jefferson County, because they've never done a project, but the concept that they have set up makes some sense to me.
Oh, it definitely does. I couldn't agree with you more. It's certainly one step better than having the town.
Right.
I just worry about.
Well, there's still, we still have local people that could,
Chime in.
chime in,
I-
right?
Fair enough.
The town would also have to agree, that's another thing.
Okay.
The towns might
How
not,
receptive they gonna be?
the towns might not agree, but I have to imagine, for like a wind project, for example. Is that what, if you run for town assessor, is that what you signed up for, to go toe to toe with Iberdrola, $1 billion, Portuguese company? I mean, that's crazy, right? You run for assessor because you can, you go to some trainings with the Tug Hill Commission and you know roughly what a barn is worth. I mean, that's kind of different, you know what I mean? So anyway, something to look into, maybe.
Yeah, we can
Yeah, definitely.
we'll get in touch with
And
Jefferson County IDA.
anything else there? Okay. So the next thing was a new board member update. So as you know, Tina's resignation because of her retirement and moving south is effective the end of the year. We did have some interest in, Jared and I attended some interviews, as well as Ron, with the county. We had a great pool with 4 people. Unfortunately, 3 of them had other commitments and issues that kind of took them out of the running. A good thing is that we've talked about having an economic development committee, and they're all good candidates for that. So Brittany has a good start to economic development committee. But that left us with 1 candidate who had some strengths, but we also felt like we'd still like a choice. So we've been in communication with Larry, and there were 2 other people that expressed interest after the initial advertisement by the county, and we hope in the near future to confirm their interest and follow up with at least 1 or 2 of them, and have them in consideration with the 1 good candidate from the first round of interviews. So, and hopefully that'll all get moving forward, and then maybe it'd be great. I was thinking with this thing with Christie, to bring that person if we had some work done by February, and bring them into that discussion. Then next would be the executive director search update, which I'll defer to Cheyenne.
Yeah, so far we've received 4 letters of interest and resumes. Tomorrow was the deadline we set. And if anybody's interested in seeing those prior to tomorrow, by all means, let me know. My cursory look at each of them, I think there's maybe 1 that we would want to look at as an executive director. But obviously that's up to the board's discretion. But I guess my question in regards to that is the search process or the applicant process closes tomorrow, so Monday morning, how does the board want to proceed with reviewing those and moving forward?
Can I offer a suggestion? It might be helpful, the key elements of the job, the experience, put together in a matrix where, you take in the information from CVs or resumes outlined in a matrix for us as a cover sheet to the resume. Because that, I think, will help focus our individual review and best prepares us for a collective discussion.
The county has a template, if you email Caitlin Smith, and do that for director levels.
Okay.
No point reinventing the wheel.
Excellent, yeah.
And they obviously should be treated as confidential documents. Right?
Yeah, thank you for that, and, I guess we'll just see what we have, and, as we've talked about all along, we do have, we didn't advertise, but we do kind of have a second job description that would, be a team member that want to fill the role of executive director, so that may be the other, maybe we could do that matrix for both, I don't know,
For the
maybe that,
candidates who have applied?
yeah, for the one, I don't know, maybe that's the.
Well, it's for every
premature.
candidate
Right.
regardless, right?
Right, but I'm saying do two matrix, do one for kind of establish a matrix for the executive director job description and how they would fit other needs of our, maybe that's premature, but, because.
Let's see what I've got.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're going.
I think, I get what you're saying, that,
Well, we have skill sets here and skill sets we've identified we need. So as we review these, what's part of my thought process is, do they meet what the executive director, and also maybe if they don't, but do they have skill sets that fill these other voids, so that we make note of that. It's just a way of making
Yeah, I
note
get
of
it.
that. It's,
So just add additional columns on the.
right,
matrix.
additional columns to identify
it could be a
areas.
future board member.
Right,
Or
or
you're just saying
just the-
identifying what they could be doing.
identify their strengths and where, if that fits any needs of our organization. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Cheyenne. So, the last item relates back to Christie's presentation and a strategic planning session for the board and staff, which is on here is February 20th from 8:30 to 10:30. And I guess I'll throw a monkey wrench from Dave, but right from the beginning, I won't be available at that date. But if the rest of the group is.
Well, I guess the intent there was understanding that if we're asking you to come and serve as hosts at the Business Leaders Breakfast, that's a time commitment. And so we were thinking to try to align the board session, the board plus possibly session on a committee meeting day and do it in lieu of, or just kind of if we have some quick committee items we need to buzz through and then go into session, we're trying not to draw too much on your time while recognizing that this process is also important. So that date is wide open really to us. We're just trying not to overtax your time.
So as someone who's gone through this process, a suggestion is to separate traditional business work of the board from strategic planning, because you're wearing a different hat, and we need to stay above the traditional work. Might be most efficient if you send out a doodle poll.
Okay.
And so your point is, wherever we land, plan on a solid 2 hours.
Yes.
That's what's important, right?
And just initial indications if evenings definitely don't work for you, if mornings definitely don't work, because otherwise the doodle polls can be this many dates and times. So if you have any strong no's, just let me know and I'll avoid those as a doodle poll.
Well, and that week, my conflict is work related, but it is also, school break week, which could affect some people in the room, so.
We'll
But
send out
that's
an
just
initial
another-
poll, and if it just does not work, we'll try again.
So to build upon Joe's point, I think we should avoid school vacation week in evenings. I know from a work perspective, that would create some conflicts for me.
Thank you.
Yesterday, I also sent out some information on the strategy session and just a starting, I guess, statement about what we feel rural economic development is. We don't want to really butcher that statement today because that statement is going to be butchered in phase 2. We just need the board's agreement that we are talking with people in the community, we're talking amongst ourselves in regards to the strategic planning, the broad economic development picture, and not just the IDA. Is everyone in agreement with that and the path the strategy will go?
I just had one question.
Yep.
The last sentence of that, I believe, said, like-minded people.
Yeah.
Could we put open-minded people?
Yes. Actually, I read through it again, and I'm like, I want to take that out.
Where did you pull that from?
This was, I created a statement, Tim created a statement, Cheyenne created a statement, and then we,
The one thing I found with things like these, because I've been through some of these strategic things where whatever that original seed is, which is that opening statement, your results will end up, or your discussion will be absolutely revolving around that. So you have to be careful because that's the direction, but whether you like it or not, that's how these things play out. That opening statement is gonna be the seed that everybody is going to focus on. So I don't know if a basic definition of what economic development really is.
we don't need that right now. We just need your agreement that we are talking big picture economic development. We will define what that means throughout this process. So in my statement, the first sentence is very vague. And it basically is just talking about how successful rural economic development hinges on collaboration among those tasked with the essential and influential roles to make Lewis County a great place to live, work, and do business. So in that sense, we're talking about collaboration and how success hinges on us collaborating with all of those facets that are involved in economic development.
I'm intrigued by your point, Jared, because I think that is the human tendency.
One of the things I always struggle with is people don't know what economic development is in this sense. You know, and of course I'm hot on this whole SEDS thing, but there's a framework for the definition of what economic development is. So a lot of people, you ask them about it, they're gonna say, well, we need more jobs, that's economic development. Well, it's not, it's a holistic thing. So if you can put that up there, that here's the framework, here's the bucket that we're gonna operate in, and it is all this collaboration and everything, but you get people thinking about these areas as opposed to coming in with half the battle with you get the public involved is defining what their expectations are going to be. So whatever you set the stage for in that opening statement, and if it's too vague, people are gonna come in, here's what I think, which is fine, but that might not pertain to what we're really trying to do here.
Yeah, the statement more is of what needs to happen rather than what it is.
Right.
And then what is
Right.
that. It is great, it's good, it's a preliminary start of it all,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to see you, eliminate the like-minded and put progressive in there.
Progressive means different things to.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
yeah.
politically-
Far left.
County full of Republicans.
So, I had crossed it out and I'll bring it back and I think I'm motivated by the reflections thus far. Maybe we don't need the statement. What probably is most important is that there's an understanding this isn't specifically about the IDA. So if we look at it from definitions, there's a definition, a real definition, Webster's, of economic development. And then there's a definition of IDA. And that's just informational. And we're not presupposing one over the other. So just that, nothing more, and then the process, Christie's process, will really drive, I think, hopefully, openness, creativity that isn't defined by any of us. And it's through that action, I think, it moves forward.
Right.
Right?
Yep. So if we're all in agreement with the broad picture, IDA is a tool of economic development, then we can officially move forward with next steps. Okay.
Any other thoughts?
I would just say based on the revenue you're gonna receive from the county, it better be, economic development and not just, IDA, so.
Well, that's why we really need to hammer down what, I don't care what definition it is, but we gotta have something.
Yeah, right, yeah, and that's really the
The
goal.
SET has, the SET program has an absolute definition of what that is as far as it involves this, and this. We can put that out there, so we're at least on the same, start the same book. We might not be on the same page.
Right.
Well, that's where an acknowledged definition helps, 'cause that's the base.
Like, you could find one, basic acknowledged definition and do both. That's just stating, here's the process, and we're collaborating on this, and here's what we're working on. I think it would be awesome. That's all.
Where are we at with the SETS programming? Are we revitalizing that? Is the IDA gonna take stewardship of that program?
I gotta look into it.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be a county
I
government.
mean, ideally, my idea would be this contract that we're entering into would be to manage that process and use that as the framework that we operate as far as this contract for economic development is basically implementing what the SETS plan is.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but that would involve the county updates it, and then we
Ideally, or if the county commission does to work that process through, and then next year we'd have a set defined as the plan, then it's basically in the plan, you guys make it happen, here's the money to do it.
Yeah, and we need to look through SEDS and see what's required as far as the plan goes, but yeah, I think the intent is hopefully this would kickstart that
And I think
process.
the work that we're doing now with Christie will go hand in hand.
Exactly.
By the time we're done, we'll have all the public input we need for it.
Yeah.
Should be able to just tune it up and make sure we fit whatever the standard structure is, so that we're eligible for grants and everything like that.
Yeah.
And next year it'll be, well, we got the plan, we don't have to ask what we're gonna spend the money on, it's already, here's where we're going. And everybody's bought into it already.
It's kind of interesting when you look up economic development, even the economists themselves disagree on what economic development is. So it ends up being down to our interpretation of which one of those we want to choose anyways. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I never bothered looking at it before.
I've
It
just
is-
been looking at it last 2 days, and
Yeah.
it's really been on my mind as far as, but like I said, if we're going to go after grant money for the economic development plan, then we gotta probably make sure we're kind of following along that framework.
Right, and that is something Christie expressed interest in us making sure we knew what that was required of SED so that her work could fit into making sure that we're not missing something along her process that could help towards that goal.
But I think if we get it done this year, this whole contract process will be pretty easy. It'll be-
It's important for an active SETS program because you need to qualify for EDA grants.
Exactly.
All right, well, I'll look into it.
All right.
So that was the last item of,
Talk to Eric because he's the one
Oh.
who drove it.
So is,
Can we talk about dates?
yeah, so at the bottom of the agenda is the upcoming dates, if we wanna.
Yeah, does anybody have any conflicts as of right now with governance and finance dates?
Finance.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm out of town.
Okay. And we're down one with Tina being gone, so,
Yeah, finance doesn't work. I'm not
Excuse me?
on that committee. I'm not even.
yeah, good. So Jared, there will be quite a bit on that agenda actually, so do we wanna try to shoot for the 28th for that meeting instead?
Well, with Tina's absence, she's another board member.
Well, I have
That was kind
been
of
Okay.
unofficially.
unofficially. I mean, the committee meetings, we have assigned committee members, but then other board members are open to join, so I tended to join if I can.
Yeah, 28th should work for me.
It does. Sorry,
It's okay.
not a sunny beach, guys. I'm not coming back for that.
The 23rd?
Well, Tom will take your ticket.
Hey, by all means.
right?
I'm interested. No, that whole, I'm gone for a week and a half, from 17th to the 28th, something like that. What? Yeah, sorry.
Okay, 30th.
We're talking, which
We're talking finance committee.
Finance.
So technically,
Yeah.
we're happy to have you.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I've already got my thing here, no with a question.
Yeah. The 30th would work for me.
Yes, how about sooner, Joe? Would that be okay? I could do the 14th.
Sooner will be a little bit of a challenge for me to get everything
Okay.
together, but I can do it if that's the best for everybody.
I could do the 15th, 14th, 15th.
The 15th or the 30th would work for me.
I'm gone, I'm not around.
Oh, you're still not?
Yeah, I'm gone for 2 weeks. The 15th, 14th or 15th, either I can do.
Let's do the 15th.
I prefer the 15th. All right, perfect.
Is that okay with you, Jared?
Yeah, I don't, as far as time of day goes, we gotta do it later in the day or
Can we do morning, please?
say no.
8 a.m. is good? 8:30? Is that okay with everybody else?
We've been missing the bus consistently, so I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for that helps.
As long as we're all doing full disclosure here. I'm sure this will probably break everybody's heart, but I will be out of town from March 8th until March 30th. And I don't have a ticket, but if you want to jump in the truck, you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to do the governance
Where are we going?
either.
I'm going to
Okay.
Florida, very specifically, Fort Myers, to see the Red Sox.
Sorry.
So,
You know they play 6 hours away, right?
All right, so,
Okay,
we may have to do, I don't have my work calendar.
all right, well, thank you, everyone. So unless there's anything else, we should officially close the meeting and then we can talk about the Red Sox.
Yeah.
So,
We don't have to talk about it, I'm both, that's what I need to know.
all right, so do you have a motion to close the meeting?
I'll move.
Ron, second.
Second.
Rumor has
Thank
it that
you.
new pitcher, the Yankees
Thank
guys
you.
will have Tommy John surgery in May.
Okay, vote.
Aye.
All right. Meeting closed.
You guys could win the World Series every year for the next 20 years and still